Hello and welcome to another video tutorial for Level 2 C# students where we're going to just do a quick little review of if statements, while loops, and switch statements. So your job here is to ask your 4 classes and each percentage that you got in each of those classes and convert it to a letter grade and include some sort of comment. Now, and the comment shouldn't be the same every time. We're going to use a switch statement so that you have at least 2 comments for every letter grade. So you could have great job, and you could have a awesome, keep it up, and so on and so forth. For B, C+, C, C-, and an F. So I'm just going to show you how it works without showing you the code to start off with. Name one of your 4 classes, and I'm going to say math, and just so that you can see that the switch statement is going to work, I'm going to give you an A grade every time so that it shows a different one. So I'm going to say 98%. And it says, way to go, you got an A in math. Okay? And then my next subject is programming. And then I'm going to hit enter, and then I got 87. And you'll notice right away that even though I got an A both times, it gives me a different kind of comment. So awesome, you got an A in programming. So this time I'll get a B in something, and I'm just going to say English, enter, and I'm going to say 74. And nice work, you got a B in English. And then I'm going to say PE, and I'm going to get another B and C. It's possible I could get nice work again. You got a B, but we'll see if I can get a different one. So this time I'm going to say 80. And so it did get the same one. And if I hit enter, it's going to exit out of the program. But there is always a possibility, and it uses a random number generator to be able to do that. So again, as a hint, we used if statements. So if your class grade is greater than or equal to 86%, it's going to go here. And then for a B, it's going to be else if greater than or equal to 73. And for C+, it's going to be else if, and the parameter is greater than or equal to 67, and so on and so forth till you get to below 50, where you're just dealing with an else. Now, within each of your answers, you then have to have a switch statement. So you might need to look up how to do a switch statement. And so you have to have at least 2 different choices for each of the A, B, C, and so on. And then how do you get it to happen 4 times? Well, you could copy and paste the information 4 times, or what you could do is you can run a while loop. So you're going to run your while loop 4 times so that it just runs through the same thing every time. So that is how I did it. Now, what I would suggest is at this moment you pause your video and you give it a shot, and give it at least 15 minutes before you go and look at my code. But try and get it on your own, research a little bit, maybe go to some of your last year's code and compare it against, your if statements and your switch statements and your while loops, and see if you can figure it out doing it that way. Now, that being said, I'm sure there is more than one way to do this. I never did it in any methods. It's all done in the main method, but you could separate out some of the stuff into methods. Would be nice too. All right, so let's take a look at what we did. First thing is we've got our main method here, and I needed a random number generator, so I made a random called number generator. It equals a new random, and that's going to get used later. And I had a variable called num classes for the number of classes, and it starts off at 0. I could have started at 1, would have made maybe a little more sense, and I just would have then had to run this as less than or equal to. So you run it in a while loop, but this isn't where I would start. I wouldn't start with the while loop. what I would do is I would start with console.writeLine, and you're getting your class name. So you got to use the console.readLine to push that into that variable. And then you're doing the same thing with the percentage, except now you have an int variable called class percent, and you use a convert to int 32, and inside you got a console.readLine, so this is where you're taking input from the reader and pushing it into this variable. Then you have an if statement, and class percent is greater than or equal to 86. Now this is where I might not even start with the switch statement. I might just start with a simple console.writeLine and say you got an A, right? This is kind of like a next step. But, so then I'll just skip this and I'll come back and talk about that in a minute. Then you've got an else if class percent is greater than or less to. And again, I'd probably just go with a console.writeLine and say you got a B. And same thing for 67, which is going to be a C+, and for 60, which is a C, and for 50, that's going to be a C-. And then your else, you're going to notice there is no parameter for else, because at this point, it's like everything 49 and below is what's left. So that means that it's an F. Now, then I would probably put it in a while loop. Is kind of the next step in this thing. And so we made a variable int num classes. And like I said, I could have started at 1 and then went to less than or equal to 4 as your parameters for your while loop. So it's going to run 4 times. Now, how do you increase this from 0? At the bottom of the while loop, way down here, I've got a num classes plus plus semicolon. So that means every time we run the while loop, we add 1 to it. So the second time it runs, it's going to be 1. The third time it runs is going to be 2, and the fourth time it runs, it's going to be 3. And that's why it has to be less than. Now, the last thing I would probably do is replace that console.writeLine with one of these switch statements. Now, you will notice that way up here, outside of the while loop, I made a random called number generator equal to new random. And why am I using that? Because I'm using that inside my switch statement. So once I have that, I can now create an int variable called response index and equal it to number generator dot next. And remember, there's inclusive and exclusive, so 1, 3 is going to give us case 1 and case 2. And so case 1, colon, and then I've got a console.writeLine that says, way to go, you got an A, and then this curly bracket, 0 curly bracket is calling the very first variable name that we have over here. And then we do the same thing here again, but we're just going to say something different, and that's case 2. So depending on what random number comes here, it'll choose one of these two if they got an A. And then you do the same sort of thing for all the other ones. So I would just copy and paste all these switch statements into each one of them and then just change the words for it. And that's how you set up a program to convert your number grades to letter grades and give them some feedback. Thanks for watching.